What's up, guys? Welcome back to our next video where we are diving into some CSS for our websites. Before I keep moving forward with all of these videos, I did want to mention something that I forgot in the first video, and that is to remind you guys that throughout watching these videos, if you find that the pace is a little too fast or you're confused about something, feel free to pause the video and take a minute to really understand what you're learning and apply that to your code. I know it can be a little fast-paced when you are watching these videos and we aren't there to help you. So take a minute and just go through the slides that you need to. They are on the website that Chris and I have linked on the Bitstream Academy site for reference. And also don't forget that Chris and I are going to be sitting on Discord today if you are watching these live for our summer session. We are around, so feel free just to reach out if you have any questions. If any of this isn't making any sense, we are here to help you. So just wanted to get that note out before we kept diving into this CSS. So where we left off, we really started to learn about CSS rules and how to write CSS in your code. We also learned a little bit about colors and adding color to your websites through font colors and background colors. So I wanted to do a quick review of what your CSS file should be looking like, because I want to make sure that we're following along and making sure a lot of this makes sense before we keep learning new things. So here's that HTML file that I've been working with. Again, it should look pretty similar to yours. We have a few image tags and headings and paragraphs. And if you remember in the last video, the way to style those is through your style.css file and using what's called a CSS rule. And these CSS rules have selectors of elements in your HTML that will power what the CSS rules are being applied to. So here's my example of what my style CSS file looks like. I have that body tag with that background color with that hex value, which if you can remember, I looked up a way to find a color scheme picker that matched Baby Yoda because I wanted some nice colors with some hex values that matched what I was looking for the look and feel of the site. So I pulled in this nice tan color. Remember, these share that hex value for you. And the hex value of a color is that 6-character string that can be numbers or letters that always has that pound sign at the beginning. And this is just a nice way for you to pick out some colors from a color picker that more match the look and feel that you are looking for your website. Now, if we keep looking here, you can see I also have multiple rules here that are applying a color to my headings. Now, this will target all the H1s on my site, my H2s, and my H3s, and so on and so forth. And then I added some styles for my links and my P tags. So now my site should look a little bit something like this. My text is that dark green color, and the background is now that light tan color. So moving forward. Font family. This is another property that we're going to be using, as well as the font color and the background color properties. The font family property defines which font is going to be used for the text on your site. Each property can have one or more comma-separated values as well. So in this example, you see that the paragraph tag has these 3 font family declarations in there. And again, these are just 3 different examples to show how you can be writing the font family property. Doesn't necessarily mean that you need all 3. So this first line is saying we want to take the web font of Times New Roman and apply that to every paragraph on our website. The second one is what's called the generic name, and that's just a serif fallback for if whatever reason the specific font name does not load for your website, or sometimes there are files that your website references that pulls in these fonts. So if they, for some reason, are corrupted or the web browser can't find them, it will fall back on this generic name. There's what's called a list of web-safe fonts. And these fonts are fonts that we can use out of the box, kind of like that list of 17 colors that the web browser recognizes automatically. So you can see here, and again, not sure if Chris mentioned this reference to you yet, but moving forward, as we start learning about these properties, the website w3schools.com is a great resource for you to use as you start learning and working with these CSS properties. You can see here there's a list on the side that shows all of them, and obviously there's many that we will not be going over today. So if you get curious as how to style something, most of the time there will be a property for you to use. So for this example, we're going to be looking at the web-safe fonts. So say I liked these nice sans serif fonts, and I want my website to not be that default Times New Roman, but I would rather it be this. Let's go with impact. We can see a good example here. So I'm going to copy impact, go to my website. And a fun little trick, again, similar to background color, is if you want a CSS property to be applied to everything on your website, the body tag is a great place to put that CSS. So we are going to do the property of font family and paste in that websafe font. Now, if I go over to my Baby Yoda site, we can see the font on every element that is text on my page has changed to that impact. Now, this heading looks really great, but the smaller text is kind of hard to read with this text. And honestly, these web-safe fonts don't really give you a lot of freedom to choose a font that you would like. We will go over Google Fonts to show you how you can start adding more fonts to your website that are outside of these web-safe fonts. But first, let's keep learning about this font family property. With the font family property, you have what's the font size property. And you saw this in my example CSS. And it's pretty self-explanatory what this property does. It's changing the font size of the text on your website. So overall, this font size property specifies the size of your font. This can be in 4 different measurements of pixels, EMs, REMs, or percentage. A really common one, and the one I'm going to show you in the example today, is with pixels. Let's take this property, go to my website, and say I wanted my paragraph tags to be a little bit bigger because they were pretty hard to read with that impact font on the body tag. Let's do font size 18 and see if that makes much of a difference for us. So now you can see as I refresh the page, my paragraph tags became a little bit bigger and easier to read, but still not 100% there. We'll work on that, like I said, with the Google fonts later. But for now, it's important to know that the font size property is something that you can apply to a selector of any element on your page or that body tag as well. Really, the only time you should be putting font size on your body tag is to be setting a base size for all of your other elements to work with. So for now, let's focus on putting a font size on just certain selectors that are in our HTML. Another way that we can write these font properties is using what's called shorthand. So you can see here in this paragraph rule, there are 4 declarations being applied to it that are related to the font style, the font weight, the font size, and the font family. Now, we went over font size and font family already, but just a quick overview of font style and font weight. Font style only has a few values that are applied to that property. If we go to W3 Schools again, and usually what I do is actually Google W3 Schools and the property that I'm looking up. You can see here it comes right up. And it gives you a nice example here, some definition and usage, and then it gives you the values. So the property values are listed here, and really the only one that I've ever used for this most commonly is the italic. So again, that's an example of using font style in this P tag CSS rule. The next one, font weight, is the weight of your font to show how bold it is, either based on a number or actually writing the word bold. For this example, we'll just stick with the word bold. In this second example, you can see that the shorthand is used here of the font property, and the 4 values for style, weight, size, and family are in this one single value. It's important to know that this value needs to have all 4 items in it in order for it to render correctly, otherwise it's not going to work. So say you had a declaration of font family sans serif and then tried to add this declaration below it without this value, it's not going to work. So I suggest if you're not going to use all 4 of these properties, then the shorthand is not needed. All right, so before we break into this code break, I wanted to show you how to add Google fonts to your website. Like I said earlier, those web fonts don't really give you a lot of creative freedom to put in these fun fonts that you want. So there is a thing called Google Fonts, and if you go to fonts.google.com, this is a database that Google provides for free that gives you an endless amount of fonts that you can use on your website. And again, kind of like picking out colors, picking out a font can be very time consuming for me. So I made sure I had my fonts already picked out before I started these videos with you guys. I'm still going to show you an example here and have you guys follow along. So I would pause this video, give yourself a minute to go through the website and pick out some fonts you want. And then once you have them selected and into the side over here, then you can keep moving forward. But to show you how to add them, let's say I wanted to put this font on my site as well. I click the font and I say select this style, and Google will put it on this sidebar for you. If you go to this embed tab, you can see a link tag is made for you. And this looks pretty similar to the other link tag that we used for our CSS and when we linked our CSS file to our HTML. I want you to copy that link tag, go back to your HTML file. Now remember, that link that you just copied is not actual CSS, but rather it is a link reference to the style sheet that Google has created that will let you use these fonts. In here, you can see I already have my link tag, but if you go in and paste it here, this is where it would go in the head tag of your HTML. Now, when you put it in here, it is very important to know that when your browser reads your HTML file, it reads it from the top to bottom. So you need to make sure that all of your references are getting put in before your link reference to your style sheet. Otherwise, when you use that font family from this reference, your CSS isn't going to recognize it. So it's important to know, and a good little thing I always do is I make sure I put some space in between my references versus my link tag for my style sheets to always know that my references need to go in this space before my web page's style sheet import. So I already have mine in here, and you can kind of see I have my 3 fonts that are in here being used. But just for good measure, I'm going to paste this new one because it looks like it had a font in there that wasn't included. Again, this format this file button is such a lifesaver, and it really keeps your code clean, and I love using this. So press this often to really help you when you start adding these references. Let's go back to your Google font, and you can see down here it actually spits out CSS rules that you can use in your CSS. So let's just copy all of these and we'll move them around where needed. So now we are back in our CSS file. I'm going to paste these here to see what we have to work with. I want this font to now be my font for my whole website. So I'm going to get rid of this whole declaration and put in this one that the Google Fonts created for me. Wow, I am having a very hard time typing today, so just bear with me. I'm a code formatting junkie, so I always need to make sure all my tabbing and spaces look good. Okay, and let's use this nice dancing script that we included in our headings. We'll just do them all the way through the H3s. Now, when I refresh my site, you can see that my heading is that really nice script that Google has provided for me, and my paragraph tags are way easier to read than that web font that I was using before. So take a few minutes, go through Google Fonts, get some fonts going on your website. We can sync up after you've added some fonts. And remember, feel free to reach out. This was a lot of information and kind of a lot of following along to get those Google Fonts working. So feel free to reach out to me and Chris, and we can help you out with this one.